Welcome back, everyone. Jake here. Currently, we're on day 57 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and of course, this war is not going well for Russia. Approximate estimates put out on April 21st is showing that over 21,000 Russian soldiers have been killed so far in this war. This doesn't count wounded in action, missing in action, or POWs. And we'll never know the true number of Russian casualties because Russia lies. Russia lies about absolutely everything. Case in point is the sinking of this missile cruiser, the Moskva. It's okay in war to admit when your enemy sinks a ship, but Russia doesn't want to admit that the Ukrainians have this capability. So instead, what do? They lie and say that a fire broke out on the ship, and the fire is what sunk the cruiser. And of course, this is nonsense. There was a picture of the damaged cruiser that leaked online, and you can pretty much determine that a missile struck it, but instead, Russia wants to claim that their navy is incompetent and they couldn't put out a fire that broke out on board the ship. There were probably 500 or 600 Russian sailors on board at the time, and we don't know the fate of these sailors. Missing on the high seas, Father expresses outrage as Russia keeps quiet about the fate of the sailors on this ship. Dmitry Shebets knows the true fate of his 20-year-old son, even if Russia won't yet tell him. Yegor was a cook on board the guided missile cruiser Moskva in the Black Sea when it was reportedly struck by 2 Ukrainian Neptune missiles on April 13th. There are other stories similar of Russian parents, Russian family members who want answers from their government about what happened to the sailors on this ship, as the government is not being honest with the families of Russian military members who have been killed. The memes around this event have been top tier. I was a big Battleship fan when I was a kid, so every time I see one of these memes, it makes me smile. And this was a huge morale boost for the Ukrainian forces, knowing that they sunk this ship. And Russia itself has now admitted that they've entered a new phase of this conflict, new phase of this war. Russia's Sergei Lavrov says another phase of invasion has begun as Ukraine reports increased fighting in the east. And this is Russia speak for basically admitting that they're not going to get control of the government in Kyiv. When Russia attacked in mid-February, this is a map of the war as of March 29th. So at the end of March, they gave up on their disastrous invasion strategy of attack from everywhere with not enough soldiers or forces really to capture any major city. And they pulled out. They completely pulled out of the north. And all they're focusing on now is getting control of the Donbass region, which includes the territories of Luhansk and Donetsk. And on this map, you can see this bold black line. Russia wants to keep the territory they took in the initial days of the conflict, but they're giving up on capturing the cities of Kyiv and Kharkiv and Odessa. Originally on their invasion map that got leaked, they were going to go into Moldova as well. So all that Vladimir Putin is telling his generals to do, all he wants accomplished by May 9th, is for them to come up from the south along this territorial border, come down from the north along this territorial border, and if not annihilate and take control of all the region, they at least want the Ukrainian forces, about 40,000 strong, to be completely cut off from being resupplied. Vladimir Putin is putting a political timetable on his forces to accomplish something by May 9th so that he can have a victory parade and say that he achieved his noble aims of freeing the Donbass region from Ukrainian Nazis and biolabs and all the other nonsense that Russia puts out. This clip is from a journalist from Radio Free Europe, and he's currently embedded with Ukrainian forces in the Donbass region. Let's watch about 30 seconds of this news clip.
Перебуваю зараз неподалік Кремінної, і тут зараз чути, як регулярно працює артилерія. Тобто так, ствольна артилерія дуже кучно попадає по і цивільним і позиціям українських військових, і разом з тим працює реактивна система залпового вогню. Тим часом українські військові окопуються, готуються до штурму і готуються підбивати російську техніку, яка буде рухатися в бік уже Слов'янська. У них є всі наявні.
And here we go. This is all we need to know. They are holding their positions now and waiting. They know that this attack is coming from the Russians. They know that they're under this political timetable. So all the Ukrainians have to do is dig in and build defensive positions and wait for the Russians to give up their defensive positions, come out of their trenches, go into no man's land, and just take the blunt of the assault, take the fire. Look at what this combat in the Donbass region is starting to look like, guys. This clip is about a minute long. I'll link this clip and all my references down below if you want to check them out for yourself. But the question I'm asking you is, do you want to be the side to get out of your trenches and your fortified positions to cross the field and advance and attack your enemy's position when this is the kind of firepower that both sides have? And something we've learned from this conflict so far is that Russia's logistics suck. Basically, anytime that one of these attack groups goes more than 90 miles from a supply base, they both figuratively and literally run out of gas. And they lose their momentum, they lose their ability to advance. Oftentimes, they either surrender or just abandon their vehicles. So the Ukrainians know where these supply bases are. They know what basically the range and limit of these attack groups is. And all they have to do once in a while is maybe strategically pull back, which lengthens the supply lines of the Russians. In addition, every time Russia takes territory somewhere, they have to leave forces behind in order to hold it. So the Ukrainians are playing a chess match. Both time is on their side, as well as the geography and the terrain. Additionally, the weather is on the Ukrainian side, as Russia lost their opportunity to advance their tanks and armored vehicles on the ground while the ground was frozen. So when Russia invaded Ukraine in February, its military commanders were widely seen to have discounted one very unconventional but effective weapon in Ukraine's arsenal. The timing of Russia's invasion, which began February 24th, coincided with what is locally known as muddy road season in Russia. So this is going to make it very challenging and very difficult for, once again, the Russian ground forces to advance on and take Ukrainian fortified positions. Ukraine has already, in the last couple days, successfully pushed back numerous Russian advances, but more are coming. There's this deadline of May 9th, and at some point the generals are going to say, just go. I don't care if you come back, but you gotta go. I can't be the general that Putin is scrutinizing who didn't send my guys in to attack. The other headline here is Zelensky warns that the Mariupol situation is severe. And this is a very tragic situation. I don't know how possibly the Ukrainians can get there in time to save these Ukrainian forces, these Ukrainian civilians who have taken shelter underground at this steelworks plant. The Russians have them completely surrounded, and numerous times now, Russia has given these forces a deadline to surrender, or else. I think they've done this like 5 or 6 times, and at this point, it doesn't have any meaning. But my tip to Russia here is if you want cities to surrender, you have to treat the people fairly if they do choose to surrender. But after 2 months of this conflict, it's widely known, widely reported how terrible Russia is treating the civilian population for all of these towns that they've captured. So if you're women and children, most likely you're going to be abducted and forced to go back to Russia. You're going to have your phone taken away, your possessions taken away, your passport taken away, and kept there in concentration camps. And if you're a Ukrainian male of military age, you're just going to be tortured. Here's a story that broke of a Azerbaijani student, and this is not a unfriendly country to Russia, but this student was studying at a university in Mariupol. A 20-year-old Azerbaijani student is describing near daily beatings during his time as a prisoner of Russia forces near Mariupol. So he's not a Ukrainian soldier. He's not even a Ukrainian civilian. He was an international college student that got scooped up by Russian forces, and for weeks they just beat him and tortured him. They electrocuted him to the point where he lost consciousness. They would revive him with cold water, and they just kept torturing him. So if that's what you have to look forward to, yeah, why would you surrender? Luckily, this student, after weeks, was eventually released and allowed to go home, but for Ukrainian men of military age, Russia is being absolutely devastating. Additionally, for those still fighting, even if you know you're going to sacrifice your life, this is what you're fighting against. These are Russian forces in the city of Kherson flying a Soviet-era victory flag. So this is the 79th Rifle Corps of the Red Army, and they brought this flag with them, this Soviet-era flag. They're not raising the Russian flag, they're raising the Soviet flag. The Russian forces have no remorse for their era, their time of communism, their time of oppression, their time of gulags, and cultural and sometimes ethnic genocide that they committed within their empire. So yeah, the Ukrainians and Western forces inside the country, this is what they're up against. This is what Russia is today. They're fighting to reconstitute their Soviet empire so Moscow can extend their glory to where it was basically 30 years ago. All right, let's pivot now to another issue we should probably discuss on this channel, and that would be the problem that Ukraine has with Germany. The German chancellor last week actually wanted to visit Ukraine along with the leaders of Poland and the Baltic states, and Zelensky turned him away. Zelensky said, "You're not welcome in Ukraine because you continue to buy Russian oil imports." And the German chancellor, the German economic minister, they're saying they're moving as fast as possible to end their reliance on Russian energy, but it's going to take time. Estimates are basically 1 to 3 years before they can finally stop buying Russian oil and gas. But at what point do you just call this blood money? And to put it in perspective, the United States announced an additional $1.3 billion in military and economic support to Ukraine, and $1.3 billion is good. Look at this ratio in billions of dollars. This is euros. And the United States is a very wealthy country with a lot of military equipment. This is fantastic that we're giving this aid to Ukraine. And if you want to see what is it based on GDP, obviously Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, Slovakia for their side, they're doing their part. America is just a very large country. But if the United States is giving $7 or $8 billion in military and financial and economic aid, how much is Germany giving Russia by continuing to purchase Russian energy? The estimates are it's about $1 billion a day. So if we're on day 57 of this conflict, Germany has given the Russian war machine about $57 billion to continue fighting this war. So this is fantastic that Western countries are helping Ukraine, but at some point, Germany has to be shamed, basically, for not being more aggressive in cutting off oil and imports. And in this article, they just give lame excuses that, yes, this would disrupt German manufacturing, the German economy, but I think as Russia continues committing war crimes and continues the brutality, I think other Western nations are going to start to turn on Germany and once again try and shame them into being more aggressive. Here's a meme, the Joey Phoebe meme, about send heavy weapons to Ukraine, buy gas and oil from Russia. And this is an unfortunate situation because I don't think Germany did anything wrong by becoming dependent on Russian energy exports. The old saying is that countries that trade together don't go to war against each other. So this was good that Germany once again tried to economically tie Russia to the continent in order to prevent an invasion or a war like this. But you have to back up that threat of, we'll cut off our energy imports if you don't act as a rational actor in a global society. But Russia basically called Germany's bluff. They invaded Ukraine, and they only wanted this war to last a couple days. But now that it's drug out 2 months, at some point Germany actually has to follow through and go through with it and cut off all of these energy imports, which would be devastating to the Russian economy. That actually does look like the red line that Putin has drawn, where if this happens, he doesn't even think he can continue fighting. So yeah, the pressure's got to be put on Germany at some point. Let's now flip to a piece of good news, and this was put out, I can't verify this, but for the first time since February 24th, more people left Poland for Ukraine than entered Poland from Ukraine. Meaning that as Russia gave up on their invasion of the north, and the capital city of Kyiv and the surrounding areas have been protected and liberated, a lot of Ukrainian refugees that fled the country are now starting to return, hoping to reconnect with loved ones, go back to their homes, try and help with the war effort indirectly in areas that are not under direct threat from Russian ground forces. Let's wrap up this video with this TikTok that I found of a Ukrainian musician in Kharkiv playing the piano in the ruins of his city. This song is oddly familiar, but I don't know where I know it from. I'm sure there are musical people watching this video that know this tune and can tell me what movie potentially I know this tune from. If you want to support this local artist, you can follow him on TikTok. This is his handle if you want to look him up and leave a comment or give him a like. I'm sure he would greatly appreciate it. Okay, everyone, that's all for this update video. If you have any comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.